Hello and a very warm welcome. You are watching Super Sunday. Today is when we'll know whether there is a Narendra Modi wave in the Hindi heartland. Today is when there will be a referendum on Sonionomics and the welfare agenda of the Congress government in Rajasthan. And today is when we'll know the real impact of the phenomena called the Aam Aadmi Party. Arvind Kejriwal, will he be able to play the role of kingmaker or spoiler? Those answers will emerge from the counting machines, which will be opened in 1 hour from now. I'm Rahul Kanwal and I'm joined by the best political team on TV. And this is the Insta trackpad. This is the magic machine that has all the answers to questions that are arising in your mind. We've got special graphics which will be looking especially at the New Delhi seat, where we will get a sense of whether Kejriwal is indeed going to beat Sheila Dikshit and Vijender Gupta. I'm also joined on this program by my colleagues Mahrukh Inayat, Shiv Arur, Padmaja Joshi, Ruchika Tomar, all across the India Today Mediaplex. They will be helping us decode Mandate 2013. I want to introduce you to our panelists this morning. Veer Sanghvi, groggy-eyed, but we'll get there in just a while. The piping hot coffee is on its way. Shiv Vishwanathan, welcome back from a holiday in South Africa. I'm told Tavleen Singh, Professor Surjit Bhalla, economist and cephalogist. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us this morning. Let's just get quick comments. We've got Yashwant Sinha and Renuka Chaudhary joining us in just a moment from now. But before that, quick comments on what today means for politics in India.
Well, one thing for sure. It is an important day for politics in India, and I think it's very reasonable to conclude that this will have a bearing and, if you will, an impact on the big one, the final, as you say.
Veer Sanghvi.
It could mark the beginning of the end for the Congress, at least this generation of the Congress, this avatar of the Congress, which has been in office for 2 terms. It could mark the resurgence of a new kind of BJP, very different from the BJP of Advani and Vajpayee. And it could mark the emergence of a third force, originally middle-class based, but now much broader based in the form of the Aam Party. So 3 very significant events to watch out for.
Shiv Vishwanathan, will Kejriwal live up to all the hype that's been built around his new party?
He will live up to the hype, but it's a bit early for that. I think to a certain extent there is the politics of the new, but the new has not consolidated itself. So I think he lives up to expectations, but not to the realism of politics.
Tavleen Singh, what is it that you will be looking at over the next few hours as the votes start getting counted?
Well, you know, I've written it, so I may as well say it. This is really a very important election because we'll know from it whether Narendra Modi is having the sort of impact that some of us think he is having. So it really is, it's the most important dress rehearsal that Narendra Modi has so far had to face.
And the question will be asked after that whether the BJP victory, if it were to happen, is actually on account of Narendra Modi's presence. I also want to introduce to our broadcast this morning my colleague Mahrukh Inayat. She's at the political test. Morning, Mahrukh, you got a fancy new studio, all set to crunch the numbers and make sense of it for our viewers?
Well, we'll try our best, and we have with us Javed Ansari, political editor, and Sadanand Dubey, senior journalist. We've been talking about how we're going to look at this election. The counting should be starting in about an hour. Javed, first with you. What are we looking at? What would you be specifically concentrating on as far as the election results are going?
Well, as far as Delhi is concerned, the performance of the Aam Aadmi Party, I do believe, and I'm willing to stick my neck out, Aam Aadmi Party will do much better than what most people give them credit for. And Chhattisgarh, what happens in Chhattisgarh? I'd be very interested in knowing. That's the one in which, you know, you can't predict a clear winner. The other 2, I'd be very surprised if the odds change.
Sadanand, 4-0, 3-1, 2-2, several numerical combinations coming up. But do you see this as a clear referendum of Modi versus Rahul Gandhi?
I think it's certainly a referendum on Modi. I think that this is in a sense, this is his first big national outing, and we're going to see how he does. And if he does badly, I think people will rightly interpret it as his charisma being less than advertised. But if he does dramatically well, or if the BJP does dramatically well, I think people will interpret it rightly as a referendum in his favor to a degree.
Okay, Rahul, Insta political analysis from here, the political desk, as well as some number crunching we're going to do for you in the
Looking
next
forward
hour.
to that. Thanks, Maruk. We'll keep coming back to you all through the day today. Let's go across now to senior BJP leader Yashwant Sinha. He's joining us on this broadcast. Mr. Sinha, are you and the BJP in a celebratory mood this morning, or are you more cautious and wanting to see actually what the net outcome will be? Are you predicting and fully confident of a massive BJP victory in the Hindi heartland, Mr. Sinha?
No, I have no doubt that we are heading for a 4-0 victory in the 4 major states which have gone to the polls. And it's only a question of time today when all this will become clear. Let me also tell you that while victory is within sight, it is the burden of expectation of the people which will have to be tackled very, very effectively by our governments in these states.
The results, especially those in Rajasthan, are being considered a referendum on Sonianomics or Dolonomics. If people were to reject the Gehlot government, do you think this would be a larger rejection of the Congress's welfare agenda, Mr. Sinha?
Yes, I tend to agree with you, especially in view of the fact that you can't start announcing these so-called welfare measures during the election year and just before the elections. Then people see through your game and understand clearly that all this is meant to garner votes and that welfare of the people is not really their concern. So if the government wants to be really welfare oriented, then it should start from day one of governance and not towards the end of the regime.
How much of the results that we'll see today, Mr. Yashwant Sinha, will be attributed to Modi's presence and his projection as your party's prime ministerial candidate, and how much would you attribute to the work done by the state leadership?
You know, every election is a combination of a number of factors. There is no doubt that our chief ministers in Chhattisgarh and in Madhya Pradesh have done commendable work, and people believe in the leadership of Vasundhara Raje, they believe in the leadership of Dr. Harshvardhan, and certainly the local leaders have played a very important role. The negative factors have also worked in the sense that there is lack of leadership in the Congress, both at the state level as well as at the central level, and they're extremely unhappy with the performance of the state governments of the Congress and the central government. But having said that, I'd also like to say that Narendra Modi has been one huge factor in promoting the prospects of the Bharatiya Janata Party in these elections.
You're saying Modi is a big factor, but the Congress says these polls have been fought on local issues and the results cannot be taken to mean that there's a larger anti-Congress wave in the country at this time. They say this is a localized assembly election.
If you know, these elections were being held in one state or two states, then I would tend to agree with them. But these are elections spread over 4 major states from the eastern part of India to the western part of India, and they are directly related to the national mood at the moment, and therefore they cannot merely be dismissed as state elections. It will make a huge difference. It will never be business as usual for the government of India henceforth.
But the BJP has miscalculated in the past. In 2004, you ended up with a 3-1 scoreline. Just before the elections were held, you advanced the elections in 2004, and that boomeranged on the Vajpayee government. Is there a risk of the BJP getting carried away by the assembly results that we might see today?
They were not completely different. We were just behind the Congress by, what, 7 seats. So 2004 cannot be taken as a standard. I think the the time gap in this particular case is so narrow that the same mood will inform public opinion and voting pattern in the Lok Sabha elections.
Will the BJP argue that if the scoreline were to be 4-0, voters have rejected the Congress and the UPA has lost its moral right to continue in power? Will the BJP demand on the floor of the House that Manmohan Singh should dissolve this parliament and ask for early elections?
You know, even from before these elections, the government was a lame duck government. There was complete paralysis of decision making. Most of our problems can be traced back to this absence of decision making. Post these election results, I have no doubt in my mind that the government will become totally lame duck, and morally they would lose whatever shred of authority is left, and therefore the only option for the Congress party and the Prime Minister is to advance the elections even by a few months and ensure that the suffering under the UPA of the people of India does not continue.
One final
anymore.
question, sir, before I let you go. Rahul Gandhi led the campaign for the Congress. It is his team that picked the candidates, decided strategy for their party. The Congress will argue that the elections have been won or lost on local issues. But do you think Rahul Gandhi will take a part of the blame or credit, as whatever the case might be, for the results that we see today?
No, it is the central leadership, clearly. You know, just as credit will go to Narendra Modi in a large part, similarly, the responsibility for the loss in these elections will lie directly at the door of Shri Rahul Gandhi. Let there be no doubt about it. His style of leadership, his style of functioning, his political understanding, everything has been exposed. He has been exposed, and clearly he has become a liability for the Congress party rather than an asset.
For joining us this morning, Mr. Yashwant Sinha, thank you very much. Shiv Vishwanathan has this wry smile. The battle lines are drawn, the swords are out for Rahul Gandhi, and also there will be a massive clamour around Modi in case the BJP does well.
True. I think right now you got to give it, Modi looks like the man of the hour, but I feel a bit sad for Rahul because he's the kind of tragedy which doesn't know how to respond to itself. So eventually he's either remote cause or final cause, but no one's going to blame him for anything.
He's a tragedy who doesn't know how to respond to himself. You're informed this morning. Thank you very much for that.